right, so there is a tremendous amount of misinformation about the DJI ban and the potential of the Pocket 4 launching here in America. I see a lot of creators that don't do their research and don't really understand tech enough, and certainly don't understand the politics here in the United States enough to be saying what they're saying online. So, my quick background, been in the tech world for 20 plus years. Work with camera companies, and also I have a political science degree, and it's kind of one of my hobbies. Just not so much on the political side because I think both sides are broken, more so just on keeping track of what's happening, and really nowadays just how inefficient and how lackadaisical our government has become. And that's really why DJI is in the position they're in, is because we have a lazy government. And because of that, I honestly do not think we're going to see the Pocket 4 launch here in America. Now, listen, I was over in Shenzhen 2 months ago. I was at the DJI headquarters. I don't have any insider information, but I certainly left that building with a very distinct feeling that we may not see a DJI Pocket 4, at least underneath the DJI brand, perhaps under another brand like Xtra. So a few weeks ago, I actually did a full video on this. You can check it out down below if you're interested, but I'll give you the high level. In 2025, Congress was set to vote on something called the National Defense Authorization Act, or the NDAA. Now, in there was a Section 1709, which required a national security review of DJI and similar foreign drone manufacturers. Now, unfortunately, that security audit never happened. And it was something that DJI was begging for, but what our government is quickly becoming known for is just sitting on their hands. And I think this actually was done on purpose, because the outcome of this was it forced the FCC by law to place DJI on their covered list. Now, the covered list is basically just a list of products and companies that the government feels may be a risk to the national security. However, there are no guardrails or anything like that once you get on that list on how to come out or how long you can be placed there. And in fact, you can be placed there indefinitely. And that's why I call it kind of like purgatory. Now, one of the things that I really take issue with is that the security audit wasn't done. But you're just going ahead and saying, no, we can't give this to the consumers. We will limit the consumer's choice, take more freedoms away from the American people because we're too lazy to do the audit. And they probably know that they won't find anything. So I have an issue with banning someone without any data. We aren't getting the data whether they are a risk, because if they are, I'll stop using them. However, if they're not, I shouldn't be forced to stop using them. And that's one of my big issues with this. Now, what is happening with the Pocket 4? But the Pocket 4 actually got FCC approval prior to all this, so they have every right to sell in the United States. However, they have pulled back their launch date. It was supposed to be or somewhere around like December 18th before the holidays, but that didn't come to fruition because there was, by all terms and by all rumors, seems to be some sort of quality control issue. But with that, let's go over some of the details of the camera that are pretty solid. I think it's going to have a dual camera system. It's going to have a wide angle and a telephoto lens, and that's really cool. It's going to include something called Hasselblad Color Science. Hasselblad is a, you know, design color camera company, if you want to call them that. And the reason they're doing that is just to compete because Insta360 has been dealing with Leica and has Leica Color Science. So I think this is just a marketing move for them. A variable aperture, fully believe that because we see this variable aperture in the Action 6. ActiveTrack 7.0, don't really care about 6K video and a larger battery. Now, the 6K video, a lot of people are going to say, oh, it's not 8K. Listen, I don't care if it's 6K or 8K. I don't use them. Really, the only reason, in my opinion, especially if you're a YouTuber, to use it is if you're using 8K footage on a 4K timeline or even 6K. That's going to give you more real estate, so you can do like lossless zooms, or you can do pans, because you're going to have a wider resolution than that of your timeline. So I think for that, it's really good. But think about this: the file sizes, like 8K, for example, 1 minute of shooting is about a gigabyte worth of data. So you got to have a lot of hard drive space, and you got to have a really solid computer to edit it. So all this 6K, 8K BS, man, your boy doesn't really care, because at the end of the day, I'm a YouTuber, and YouTube has some of the worst video compression out there. It's the reason why a lot of people still shoot in 1080, because the difference between 1080 and 4K on YouTube is very, very slight, but the difference in terms of file sizes is very big. So for me, that's not a big deal. So all of these are really nice, and I do believe most of these, if not all of these, are probably going to be what we see. But the fact of the matter remains, I don't think we're going to see the Pocket 4 in the United States. And listen, I was in Shenzhen about 2 months ago. I was at the DJI headquarters, and again, I left that building really with the feeling they're probably not going to launch here, or at least underneath the DJI brand. Now, there's another brand you've probably heard of called Xtra that has a Pocket 3 knockoff, but when you open it up, it's the exact same internals, the exact same chips as DJI. I think they'll probably go that route, if anything, versus launching it through DJI. Now, the reason for or the official reason for the delay is because there's quality control issues. And I believe this is because the last few launches from DJI have been riddled with problems. They seem like they've been half baked. I mean, when we went to the 4 to the 5 Pro, that wasn't an upgrade, that was a reskin. We got a slightly better sensor, not even in size, just a better one that has more dynamic range. But I think really the outcome of that was just it made it look overprocessed. And it really wasn't that good. I prefer the 4 over the 5. Now, the 6, I believe, is a true upgrade. We have a better sensor in there. We have this variable aperture. I like the way it looks, but it does suffer with, in my opinion, exposure issues. And I shouldn't even say exposure issues. It's more like, yeah, exposure issues. I was thinking focus. The focus isn't bad, but it's the exposure issue. And there's a lot of this like exposure breathing. It's really interesting. But if you have the camera, you probably know what I'm talking about. And it's the reason I've held off on my full review of the 6 is because I'm running into some of these problems and I want to make sure I truly understand them before I report on them. And they've had some firmware updates, but not one addressed this. So I really do think it has to do with the variable aperture, in my opinion, in my unofficial findings. But because we've seen that, and then we've seen the Nano, which was a complete flop. I know a lot of you guys like it. I like the camera. I like the way it looks. It's just not reliable, and I can't have a non-reliable camera on me. It's not going to work. It overheats, and anyone that says it doesn't overheat isn't using it right or is using it in the Arctic. Once we get into summertime, you guys will start to see if they don't fix it before then. So I think they're getting a bad reputation of putting out these products lately that aren't that good. Or they'll say things like the Nano. When I contacted them about my problem, they said, well, just don't shoot in anything over 30 frames per second. Don't use high bit rate, and don't use 10-bit, for example. But again, that's not what you advertise. So I think the American public is really getting upset with them, and they're getting a bad reputation. I think they're aware of that. So they pulled back the Pocket 4, knowing that they had these issues. But I really think there's another thing going on as well. I think they're contemplating whether or not to launch it here. And the reason for that is because the FCC banned a lot of the parts. So I think that's going to be a big issue in terms of any service work that needs to be done on past products or, their last future product, I guess, which would be the Pocket 4. So you bring in the Pocket 4, you don't have any local, meaning domestic, in the United States repair centers because you can't get any of those chips sent in. So I think that's going to create a huge problem. I think they're weighing out what they need to do or what they want to do because it's going to cost them money to come into this market. And not only that is, if they have to send away your camera to get repaired and then send it back, what if it has a banned chip in it? Or what if, something else happens, like they try to charge you tariffs or something to bring something back in that you already own? This is not unheard of, okay? It's a complete mess. And I don't think DJI wants to get involved in that. So this is a pretty bold prediction. I don't think we will see it come out underneath the DJI brand. I think there's a good chance we see it coming out off one of these knockoff brands like Xtra, rather than seeing it directly from DJI. And perhaps what will happen is they'll launch it with DJI, and then a year later, we'll see it come out from Xtra. That is my suspicion. This is the way they're getting around it. And the reason for this, folks, has nothing to do with tech. It has nothing to do with national security, or else they would have done the review. This has everything to do with this supposed American first thing, right? They want to bring drone companies back here because the billionaires aren't getting a piece. That's it. That's all you need to know. The billionaires are not getting a piece. And it's a reason why we're seeing Don Jr. on a lot of different drone boards and a lot of different of these American manufacturers that are popping up. I'm all for having an American manufacturing and American drones. I'm just not all for restricting our freedoms based off of what? If you tell me what it's based off of, I'll sign up. Look, I'm a patriot. Listen, they are bad. No more DJI. I haven't heard that, and I don't believe that. And you guys refuse to prove it to us, so you're just going to keep them in purgatory because you have a political interest in doing that so that your billionaire friends can make money. This is America, folks.